I was sat on this idea and I thought, I'm going to make some singles up, some bright up baits, make them really smelly and visual, and I didn't have the bottle to do it. Banged it out there, I thought, oh, I wonder if it's going to work, so I'm wading back to the bank, and then I seen the line hissing off the spool. I thought, shit, that's coming off faster than I'm wading back. If I'd have done my own bait company doing Fluoro singles, I've got no doubt I would have been a millionaire now and be retired and have a different life. I'd never met Terry at that point. I suppose it was about mid-90s. He came over, oh, hey Frank, how are you doing? We started chatting and we got totally engrossed in each other's sort of conversation, but we were using the chod rig. So we showed him, chapter and verse, this is what we're doing, no one knows about it, just a few of us from the northwest that had shown. I said, you really, really should try it.
And one thing we must, in fact, it was the main thing I wanted to talk about initially, is the fact that your innovative approach to fishing has yielded an awful lot of products and tactics that people perhaps might not even be aware that you were behind.
Yeah, well, I guess it works in generations, really. I kind of fell after Rod Hutchinson and Kevin Maddox, where I sort of got noticed, I suppose. And then you've got all the current crop of anglers that use social media and everything. And you can easily get lost in the mist of the time for what you brought to the party, for want of a better term. And I've always had an inventive mind, so I used to address a problem my own way, and quite often it did turn out to be fairly pioneering stuff, really, So I still do to this day. If I have a problem, I always think, how can I address that? I don't go looking for existing things that have tried to tackle that problem. I actually start from ground zero and have a look at it myself, It's not always to do with fishing as well. I've had other inventions for other things, which is another story.
I think that would be to gloss over what have been some very significant things, Frank. Like, we need to talk detail here because lots of people won't know, for instance, just how much you have affected their fishing as they do it today.
Yeah, well, I mean, what particularly were you thinking of?
And I was going to say, I don't want you to have to lay it out there, but stuff like the single hook baits, can you tell us about the way that all came about? Because really what people perhaps don't understand is, and I was just about around in the industry to see it, was the impact of those dynamite, like specifically the pineapple stuff, but I know it goes a long way further back for that.
Well, just to give you an idea, no one was doing fluoro baits when I did it with dynamite, and that was in the late 90s. They came to me, they'd heard a bit about it, and I've been using them for nearly 20 years at that point. And what happened was they made an agreement with me, and they did £1.1 million worth of sales the first year. So that gives you some indication of how many they sold and how people bought into it at the time. But to give you an idea of what happened was, it's a long story, but I was doing very much like everybody else. I was fishing Reedsmere, which is an old estate lake in Cheshire. It goes back to the Ice Age. It's a kettle really from 12,000 years ago. Silty as hell. I was fishing there and going through the motions like a lot of people. It was in the early days of the hair rig. So a lot of us were just side hooking baits. That was the new revolution, apart from burying a hook in paste. So we got on the side hook and started catching the odd fish. And then the hair came out, which was a bit of a game changer to say the least, but it was still difficult. And I was unhappy that I was just using a wrist rocket, putting 70 baits out, about 60 yards, and doing very much like everyone else on the lake. I thought, it's got to be better than this. I'm just the same as everyone else. So I'd had this idea in my mind that the centre of the lake, because it's like, oh, here's my wife coming in, she's just finished work. Yeah. Oh, that's my son. Hey, guy, he's a carp angler as well. We're just doing the film here, guys, so you okay?
You all right? Yeah.
So, where was I? I was doing the same as what everyone else was doing, and I'd had this idea in my mind that the centre of the lake, which was about 44 acres, was untouched. It was like virgin territory, and we're watching fish fizz and everything. It seems ridiculous now. You'd think I'd just put a single on it, but then you didn't. You were thinking the water's silty, and you know, really deep silt it was. You used to get the bait stained, and all your hook length would come back jet black, and your leads. And we're thinking it's just going to bury out of sight in the mire that's out there, and they'll never find it. And we were limited to how far we could cast out. We was using, I made a rudimentary spot at the time and was messing around doing that in the late 70s. Anyway, I was sat on this idea and I thought, I'm going to make some singles up, some bright hook baits, make them really smelly and visual. And I remember doing them orange, and I had some Scopex flavour, the very early batch of Rod Hutchins and stuff, so I did them grossly over flavoured, sat in it. And I didn't have the bottle to do it. I turned up and I ended up fishing on bait, just like everyone else. And I was working on the airport at the time, and I was looking at 4 days in work, and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to chance it. So I rigged it up, put my waders on, and waded out on the meadow and thrashed this. Well, I set it 6 inches off the bottom actually, because I thought I couldn't handle the thought of it disappearing and all the crap on the bottom. So waded out, thrashed it out, and there was the Tomlinsons were on there. It's quite well-known anglers, and you know, Brian Bevans, quite a few well-known guys. And they're like, what the fucking hell are you doing? So I slammed it out in the middle of the lake. I guess in them days it was probably 140 yards, 150 yards. It was a good caster, you know, and I'd got the decent carbon rods, the very early carbon rods to do it. And instead of having like 1 3/4 and £2 test curve rods like everyone else, I'd gone straight in there and got some, they were heavy at the time, 2 3/4. So banged it out there. I thought, oh, I wonder if it's going to work. So I'm wading back to the bank, and then I seen the line hissing off the spool. I thought, shit, that's coming off faster than I'm wading back. Realised what was going, wound down, cracked it. I had an 18 pounder. And then the Tomos were on there, and they said, that's the luckiest thing we've ever seen. That's just a fluke, that. So, but I knew different. I kind of thought, oh, I've cracked it here. So I weighed the fish, photographed it, popped it back, weighed it out again, thrashed the same rod out, new hook bait on it. Just a little square of polystyrene in the pop-up, that's all, with the paste roll round it and boiled. Bang, straight out there again. Got back to the bank this time, putting the indicator on, and the line got ripped out of me fingers when I was putting the Roberts line clip. So I had a 19 pounder, and I thought, shit, I've cracked it. And then I lost one. And this happened in half an hour before I had to pack up and go to work. So I was in work on the airport. All I could think of, I've got to get back to that mire and get out there and do this. I've discovered something amazing, much more efficient than the hair, because it was just what I was doing. And it was just in my mind. I was thinking, yeah, I've got to get back. So I finished 2 12-hour nights. I sort of knackered from work. Charged down there, got in the same swim virtually, banged them out, and just before dark actually. Oh, was it? No, that's right. I got there in the morning after the nights, went through the day, and I thought, shit, it's not worked. And then I went into the night, and it was just coming light the following morning. I heard the line pull out the clip, and I was away. I had a 23 and a 24 in a brace, and then that's how it all started. And then I went back again, but it never happened in the dark. Which, looking back, I understand now. Through having done that over a period of time, I knew why, and I'll explain that in a minute. So I went back again, and I had a double take. I had the biggest mirror in the lake, and one of the other well-known fish, which called Jurassic, on in a brace, 2 on at once. You can only use 2 rods, and it just went on like that. Basically, all the rest couldn't believe I was catching on singles because I conned them. Some people actually watched it, but they didn't have the rods to do it, the Tomos and that. But they were all surmising that I was putting food in, because they couldn't imagine that I weren't fishing on bait. So I didn't do anything to dispel the rumour. You know, I was going, oh, I'm getting the bait, but I'm not telling you how I'm doing it. So they were staying awake all night and watching me, and they thought I'd got someone going out in a boat or swimming out for me and all the rest of it. So I said, I'm not telling you. And one guy said, I know what you've been doing. You've been using them giant polystyrene feet and walking out in the middle of the night. So I said, I might have. So there was all kinds of rumours going around. So it was just all bollocks, you know. I was just fishing singles, but I knew I'd got a limited time using those singles before the rest all cottoned onto it and got the rods. And that's what happened. It became known as the chuck. Everybody did the chuck. It was like literally 40 anglers on there at once, all blast in the middle, but it still worked. And but what I did, I used my time wisely. I was getting that many bites, I could experiment. And the interesting thing is, what I did, I used to put the shot near the pop-up, like you would now. You might have it, 10 mil off the bottom, or like a Ronnie rig would present it. And when I tried that, I couldn't get a bite, or very few. So what I did, I'd put a big obvious shot for everyone to see as I waded out in the water. Then I'd slide it between 8 and 9 inches. So it was a serious pop-up, and then whack that out with a long hook length, feel it down, and that would go. And I used to call it gob level, because you think about it, if you've got a 20 pounder, it has to swim very close to the bottom if it's travelling. To notice something that's in the silt on the bottom, you'd have to literally be focused attention on that for it to clock it and pick it up, as bright as the baits were and smelly. Whereas if you fished it gob level, even a 20 swimming close to the bottom would have it in front of its face. That's how I, theoretically was thinking about it. Anyway, it did work. And then what I'd do is I'd land the fish and I'd slide the shot back down near the bait quickly. So I got away with that for ages. And then I spent some time off the mire for a certain misdemeanour, which I won't go into. And then when I went back on there, I thought I'm going to do just what I used to do. So the best I did, by the way, was 37 fish in a year. And in the winter, I had 17 fish, and there was one other bite on the whole lake. So I was doing something right there, That's to everybody. And I was only fishing Saturday days, so the homework I'd done on the baits with the singles paid dividends when it come to scratching time in the winter, But the other thing I started doing as well was baiting up at night when everyone was in the land of Nod. I'd do, it sounds ridiculous now, but I'd get thousands of baits and drill them with a Black & Decker, each individual one. I'd make up with 15-pound nylon, like a necklace, a loop with a clip on. I'd thread all these boilies up it and then put an Alka-Seltzer underneath. I was casting them out with a beach caster in the dark, letting the Alka-Seltzer melt and then striking them off. So I was baiting up at long range that way. And I had big bunches of baits hung in my bivvy. It looked like a vineyard on the umbrella spokes. And that's how I did it. So the fish we used to find in my baits when everyone else was just purely on singles. And when the autumn came and they were feeding up closer in, that's when it started to happen more. I was fishing singles or over bait closer.
And you're quite matter of fact about how that evolved, but there are a couple of moments there that actually would have necessitated a real leap of imagination to get there. And you weren't, you spoke about it as if it was nothing, but you've gone from fishing the same as everyone else to doing something so radical that it had never been done before. Well,
that's right, because what happened, Rich, there was a bloke called Dave Phillips, and he got to hear about some of this that was going on through the grapevine, because I broke all the records for the number of 20s caught in a day and in a season, the number of fish and all this. And he asked me to write for this magazine called Big Fish Magazine. And Andy Little used to be in it, and various other well-known anglers. So it was my first ever article, and I decided to write about it. And I thought I might as well go in all guns blazing, so I'll give tons away. I told about using marker floats with flights on, spoms, sterodent tubes which I was making, which someone else got credited for. It wasn't their thing, it was mine. It just got plagiarised, as things do. And I talked about all the baiting up at night, the singles, recipes, this, that and the other. And I sent him this huge article, and he went, Jesus Christ. He says, we've had the biggest mailbag we've ever had. He said, I've had sacks and sacks of mail. He says, you could have got about 5 articles out of this. He says, each one of these things are groundbreaking things. He said, I've never seen out like it. And then the club got on to me, Stoke-on-Trent Angling Society, and threatened to throw me out of the club because I'd mentioned their waters. And I says, well, I didn't know there was a publicity ban. So they stopped me dead. They said, if you write about it again, you're gone. Because he wanted a full series off me. So that's when Tim got involved with angling pubs. But yeah, there was loads that I gave away. But to me, it was just like bread and butter. You know, it was things that I'd come up with to solve problems. You know.
True, but we're talking about single hook baits, markers with flights on,
Fluoros as well.
Like those three things alone are game changers. And you were prepared to tell people about them.
Yeah. It's the same with the chod rig, or the
short rig.
The short rig, as I call it.
We're going to come on to that.
Maybe. Yeah.